The new Canik TP9 SC, as in subcompact. Let's take a look. Coming up next on GBGuns. Much anticipated release. Everyone's been wondering. Canik follows all of the other Walther models, so why not do a subcompact? Here we have it. It comes in this foam here that you need to compress into the shape of a gun. Not just kidding, that's a protector. Excuse the stickers here. Yeah, I have already had this thing out to play with it a bit. Show you what all comes in the box. We have the gun in a new style holster, more on that later, and a flush fit magazine with the finger rest, an extended 15 round magazine with the spacer and the same texturing on the front, of course a trigger lock, quality control, chamber flag, a different back strap. Yes, it's subcompact with an interchangeable back strap, a flush floor plate for absolute smallest signature possible on the gun, and an optic mounting plate. This is cut for the shield pattern of optics. And then what I've come to really love about Canik, this neat little toolbox that you get that's really just an organizer for all the small stuff that usually ends up bouncing around inside the case. We have 3 different wrenches, an extra roll pin, it looks like, different mounting screws and lock washers. And up top, behind the foam divider, we have our bore brush, polymer cleaning rod so as not to scratch the bore, manual, warning about the disassembly because it is different than other guns unless you're familiar with the TP9s, and a manual dedicated to the PPQ SC. Nice high gloss photos. Those of you wondering about numbers, there's your specs. You can pause here. You can see they went with a 3.6 inch barrel. Computer graphics for images, but they're nice and clear and plenty large. We'll get the packaging out of the way and get to the actual gun. So first things first, because I know people are going to ask, how does it compare to the TP9 SF Elite, which is this guy here. Here's our SC, and aligning the back edges up, we can see we've got a little bit shorter on the front end. In fact, we only have 2 rail slots here versus 3 on the Elite, and they've chopped some off the grip. Otherwise, the gun is practically the same. The sights are a little different because we've got a optics plate here, but everything else is a spitting image. And why that's cool is if you're looking at this gun, chances are you already have a TP9 of some sort in this new inside or outside the waistband holster that comes with it. The tension is on the trigger guard, so you're not going to scuff up your frame. In fact, you have a little bit of play side to side and up and down, and that's going to help prevent scuffing your finish going in and out of the holster. It does retain without any question out of the box. You do have adjustable retention, and you can reverse these clips, unscrew them, put them on the other side, and have yourself an inside the waistband holster, which I think is pretty cool. But anyways, the shape of this, since these guns are all so similar, the SC obviously fits this holster, SF Elite fits the holster. Do we need to go through all these? I think we can. Elite Combat fits the holster. Elite Combat Executive, which is really just Elite Combat but in cooler colors, fits the holster. What if we go really old school? The TP9DA, the old P99 clone, it fits the holster. And if you like the holster and want to carry something massive, the TP9 SFX fits the holster. So the holster you're getting in here is really the value of, well, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guns worth of holsters because it fits them all. And that's something I'm really excited about. As a guy who has a lot of guns and likes to rotate what he carries, it gets frustrating when you need a different holster for each gun. So props to keeping the design close enough for all of that. Here's a better look at the holster. We can see it's a plastic or Kydex of sort. Feels a little softer than Kydex. Not sure what it's made out of. No sharp edges along here. It hasn't been necessarily radiused like a real high-end holster, but this is a decent holster. And you notice it's friction retention, no silly powder release or anything like that. Nice and minimalist, and with this short barrel, fits pretty well. Now, let's take a look at the gun. As always, we'll start things off by showing clear. We do have a loaded chamber indicator here that pops up when loaded. It has a little bit of red on the end of it. Looking inside, we can see not only is there no round, but that barrel's got a nice polished feeder end. So, starting at the front, as we always do, side to frame, just a little bit of side to side, a little bit of vertical. Barrel lockup with the front of the slide is good and tight. Barrel lockup in the slide, where it really counts, is good and tight. All what's to be expected from a modern firearm, although sometimes we do find some letdowns. We have 2 slots here for mounting accessories. No texturing on the front of the trigger guard. That is a difference from the older models. We've got front serrations for styling and press checks. They're nice and aggressive without necessarily anything on the frame to bump you off of it if you're grabbing good and high. Our slide lock and release is good and long. I love this because it's real easy to reach. Downfall for me and for larger hands, and it's the same on Caniks, Walthers, HKs. Anything with a real long release like this is when I shoot, I somehow end up with my thumb resting on it, and then the slide doesn't lock back on an empty mag. That's a me thing. That's a shooter error, not a gun error. Our trigger has a red safety dingus in the middle. You can see the trigger will not pull without that being depressed. Speaking of trigger pull, come to a wall, break, no creep. It kicks you out to a reset that's right at that wall again for another break. That real short, tight reset, good trigger feel. And something I was thinking about, now this trigger is very similar to what you'd find on a Walther, as is the incredibly short reset, not just of the trigger, but of the mechanism. So we have a striker indicator here on the back. You can see it's gone because I've fired it. All I've got to do is move the slide about that far, just far enough for the barrel to unlock. Sorry, a little bit farther than that, I guess. About that far, and we've rearmed. That could, in theory, if you had, let's say, a soft load, something was wrong with it, give you a chance for a second strike. Not saying that's what it's designed for, but it could be a possible positive. Speaking of positive, we have nice texturing on both sides here. Memory points for the trigger finger to rest and the support thumb, so you're holding the gun the same way every time. Good relief under the trigger guard. The edges here aren't rounded per se, but they're not sharp either. Some nice variable aggression checkering on the front strap. Magazine release is good and subtle. These are reversible, so you can have it be left or right. And since your slide release is ambi as well, this is an ambi ready gun. We've got some nice fine aggressive texturing there. I'm not a big believer in texture on the side of the gun being necessary, but I know for those of you that like to shoot isosceles, that can be of help. Underneath, of course, no big mag well, but as I've said many times, when you have a double stack to single stack magazine like this, your magazine is effectively your mag well. With the 12+1 capacity, so 12 round magazine, and the finger rest, I can get 2.5 fingers on here with my large hands, which means pretty much everyone's going to be able to get 3 full fingers, and half a finger is almost as good as 1 finger, so I'm going to call this a full-handed grip. Magazine kicks out nicely, that positive ejection. The 15 rounder has this base plate that works also as a sleeve. I think that's a pretty ingenious way of doing it. You know, usually when you have a smaller version of a gun like this, they give you a full-size magazine and a sleeve you slip over. And the problem is that sleeve can ride up and down and sometimes cause issues. This is part of the base plate. It's not coming undone. Throw that in there for 15, full hand grip, just like I get on the 15 round. Actually, this is about 2.5. Interesting. They did something smart there. And so there's some void back here because nothing needs to be there. Coming around the back side, we've got that same sort of raised pyramid checkering. There we go, now the light's showing it. Slide to frame fit. Good and tight. No real movement there, just a little bit as is necessary for the gun to function. The sights you might notice are different. We have a glow-in-the-dark front sight, big white dot and blacked out rear. That should make it really easy to grab visually, and it is squared off, which I appreciate for when I go to shoot groups. I shoot that top edge against this top edge, and having a nice squared off sight picture makes it easier for me to shoot accurately. Speaking of squared off, look at that nice, really sharp, definitive ledge there for being able to rack off of a belt or table, etc. for the one-handed commando racking if need be. One thing of note though is as your barrel gets shorter, the recoil spring assembly needs to be stronger, and that can mean that these are a little tougher to rack than a longer barrel equivalent. Not a whole lot of difference that I feel right now, but also had a glass of wine. So that's the right side of the gun. We've seen all the way around. Next we'll field strip this thing and take a look inside the gun. So field stripping the TP9 Elite SC is a little different than other guns you might be used to. Very similar to other guns in the family. First, check for clear. We're going to depress the trigger, release the striker, pull down on the takedown levers here on both sides. Just like that. The slide comes forward about a 1/4 inch or so, just off these rails, and then comes off the top. Doesn't always do the cool somersault like that. The gun and I spent some time practicing that before the video. I'm just kidding. Anyways, taking a look inside, we see our dual tanged trigger bar that is very similar to some other manufacturers. Nicely polished though, very clean construction. You can see there's an insert here that's housing all of the business end of the trigger, and some steel inserts for the rail, front and rear. Not super long, but definitely no shorter than what you'd see on a Glock. And here's our locking face. You can see there's, get the light in there, some extra metal up front there that I don't recall seeing in earlier guns. In fact, here is the SF Elite, and it looks to be a plastic. No, there's a metal sleeve. There's a little bit of wear on that corner that lets you see that it's metal. It's just not as obviously metal as this piece. Nathan Explosion would approve if any of you out there appreciate metal. That's from Metalocalypse, the Death Clock band show. I'm going to get this other gun together, I guess at another time, so we can continue on this. So there's a look inside the frame at construction style and quality. Very clean. No flashing or spillage or anything like that on the polymer. Coming up top, we have a dual stainless captured spring setup here. Very nice. It means you can't tune it, but you know, this is a carry gun, not necessarily one for tuning, but that's a nice setup, and that dual spring helps by getting the slide moving and then decelerating it as it needs to so it doesn't bottom out so hard on the back side of the frame. Nice move there. Pop our barrel out and look inside the slide. We can see we've got a lot of metal removed here to help lighten the slide. They did not take Walther's approach of using polymer back there. So this slide does weigh more, but that also should help keep the cyclic rate appropriate. Those of you who aren't familiar with the physics on these things, when you have a short barrel, short slide, your cyclic rate can get pretty quick, and you can end up with guns moving faster than the magazine can feed them as an issue. So having a little bit extra weight back there is not necessarily a bad thing on this. We do have the removable plate, which you can put the shield style sight on. Unfortunately, I do not have one of those on hand, so I won't be able to run that. Take a look at our barrel here, 3.6 inch barrel, nicely polished feed ramp, comes good and wide. Maybe a little bit of a rounding there to prevent any unnecessary damage to the rifling, but it is a pistol, not a rifle. Check our chamber fit. As always, we're going to use our nozzler match. Use this stuff for years because it's the most consistent ammunition I've encountered. Dropping a round in, and what we're looking at is focus camera. What we're looking at is the brass supported all the way around. You can see there's maybe a little bit less support underneath there. Not entirely sure on that. Hard to see. Looks like it's pretty much supported. At the very least, it's supported as much, if not more, than the earlier generation Glocks. And those have proven fine as long as you stay away from any super hot reloads or craziness like that. For reassembly, we're going to reverse the disassembly process. Get our barrel drop back in there. Slide. Let me cancel this autofocus for you. And then bring the slide. I'm just accustomed to holding the gun in my right hand. So gun in right hand, we're going to line up this relief here on the slide with the front rails. Set it down. And then, oh, did I rearm the trigger maybe? Rack it and it's back together. Quick functions check. Trigger fires, resets and goes. Slide locks and releases. Oh, and a question for the lefties. How is it from the other side? Slide locks and releases. So it's fully functional. Good job there, Canik USA. So, be it a 12 rounder that conceals very nicely, or a 15 rounder that probably conceals still just as good, just sticks out a little bigger, we have now a junior to the Canik family of firearms. And at this slide to this slide, you can see end to end there about how much shorter they are. We'll get this out to the range and of course do what's for dinner. Running a variety of different loads: steel case, aluminum case, brass case, nickel plated, maybe some black nickel plated if you want stuff to be really pretty, hollow points, round nose, truncated rounds, all kinds of stuff from 65 grains up to 165 grain. Those of you who were fans of the Freedom Munitions 165 would be happy to know that that load is back now through Ammo Inc. in their Stealth line. That was one of my favorite subsonic lines. We'll get it out to the range soon and let you know what we think.